Jesus' ministry includes all people, for God desires all people to be saved and to be gathered into his church, to live in his kingdom forever. That is the desire of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And St. Josaphat understood this. When he was knocking around in the 16th century, he was in Eastern Europe, and at that time they were churches that belonged to the Orthodox Church and were not in communion with Rome. His particular church decided to become in part of Rome, to be in union with the Catholic Church. And Josaphat became a monk attached to the Catholic Church, in a church in union with Rome, and then he became a bishop. And all the kings and the authorities at the time, they were not happy about this, because the churches that were not in communion with Rome, they had more control over. They could control the property more, they could control the wealth more, and under Rome they were more protected and they didn't have as much influence on the church. And so they ganged up and killed and murdered St. Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat knew those risks, but he was faithful to the truth. He was faithful to God's great call, and he wasn't scared to be united with Rome. That courage we need in our time. We need to have courage to be in communion with the church, to be courageous to the gospel and the commandments of God, to say, on Sunday I will rest, I will go to Mass. Every day I will make time for prayer for my loving God. I will show mercy. I will care for the poor. I will say no to abortion. I will say no to euthanasia. I will say no to artificial contraception. All these things which would make us deeply unpopular in our world, and we can be a bit shy of these topics and not want to talk about them. Well, all these things are God's commandments and God's truths which bring us into his loving kingdom. And so, like St. Jehoshaphat, let's have great faith and great courage to be in communion with God through his church, for it's him that saves us and brings us into a kingdom of paradise and bliss. Let us not be afraid to be faithful.